Hi all, we're delighted that you've chosen to take in a virtual screening at the 2022 DocLands Documentary Film Festival. And I hope that the Sanctity of Space filled you with a massive feeling of beauty and true exploration, like it did me. I'm Joni Cooper, Director of Programming for DocLands, and I'm here with one of the directors of the film, Renan Ozturk. Thanks for being here, Renan.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joni. It's good to have this long-term friendship with DocLands and yourself.
Yeah, it's like the Sanctity of Space has been a long time coming. And though you weren't able to be with us in 2018, it was pitched to our DocLands audience that year. And I have been waiting and watching for it ever since.
Yeah, it's a long-term passion project. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why it took us so long to make this film, but as you can see, there's so much archival material in there. A lot of Washburn's old video and photos had never been digitized before, so there was a lot of nerdy research that went into it.
Well, and that nerdy research, I think, really paid off, because I just think you guys hit it out of the ballpark in terms of the recreations, beautifully shot, and having actual footage of Bradford and his voice and interviews, and mixed with your adventure and exploration of the area. It was just fabulous.
Yeah, no, thanks for recognizing some of that. Yeah, I don't think we could ever do Washburn like complete justice, because he did so many things in his life, and he could have been world famous for any single one of them. But yeah, it was good to lure people in with a bit of an adventure story, and hopefully have them come away learning a little bit about the spirit of exploration through his eyes, and hopefully it helps us all look at exploration as this way of sharing moving forward. And I think that's the kind of empathy we need moving forward, in not only the outdoor filming space, but in all different areas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know I was familiar with, of course, I was familiar with both you and Freddie Wilkinson's exploits in the wilderness and your artistic side. And I had in my office in Banff, the walls were covered with Brad's iconic photographs. And so that's how I learned about him, was through his photographs, but I certainly didn't know any of the history. I was so happy to fill it in, and to actually meet him on screen was such a treat. Where did you go primarily to get some of that archival footage?
Well, yeah, Freddie's he's like a full-on like writer, historian, so he was leading a lot of that side of things. But one of the major sources was the Museum of the North in Fairbanks, Alaska. And there was one funny story, actually, the sequence that opens the film, where we were flying around the range with a giant 8x10 camera. That was Brad's actual camera. And at one point he had donated it to the Museum of the North before he died. And he himself had tried to get it back to do some sort of research or shooting with, and they wouldn't give it to him. And somehow we convinced them to give us his actual camera and take it back up into the sky one last time over the Alaska range. And when we were there, we just saw their troves of film and all kinds of artifacts. There was an entire scene that never even made it into the film, where we were kind of going through their archives. And yeah, you could do an entire series just on Washburn's life alone. So yeah, you can see how it's like a tricky film and risky film to make in the way that it ended up.
Yeah, that's for sure. And as you said, it could be a whole series, because as we saw even from the bits and pieces of archival stuff, that there was his early days, just when he was a boy out there, and then after he met Barbara, and the exploits they had and the things that she took part in, on through to the incredible work that he did with aerial photography, which I do see you did a fabulous job of emulating, of sort of a tribute to Washburn through that glorious cinematography.
Yeah, I think definitely the Washburn pushed us in our photography of the Alaska Range specifically. And another like funny behind the scenes thing, I don't know if you saw, there's like a couple shots of the Cineflex. It's the gyro stabilized unit underneath the helicopter. But when you just look at that alone, it kind of looks like Washburn's 8x10 camera, and you know that if he was alive, he'd be using whatever the latest technology was to share these places in ways that hasn't been seen before. So we sort of felt like we were doing him justice by taking these big risks and trying to bring that camera system out on a first ascent climb where we wouldn't even know if we would be in the right position at the right time. And luckily, like, got a few shots, which we didn't even know until we got back. But yeah, it was quite an adventure.
Oh, that's excellent. So knowing that, you know, when you went out and tried the Moose Traverse at the very first time, after Freddie had brought it up, had you already made the decision then that you were going to make a film about Washburn and the Traverse?
No, I mean, this is one of those projects we didn't know we were going to make a film until the end. Like Meru was the same way. You kind of just follow your passion into these projects. And the deeper we got into the Tooth Traverse, the more we started to learn about Washburn. And there's just so many white knuckle climbing films that celebrate suffering and that side of climbing. And you know, both Freddie and I have been part of that. But the more we got into it, the more we realized, yeah, this climb was hard and scary, but we didn't want to play that up. We wanted to play up the joy of climbing. And even on our final climb, we called it vacation climbing because we just had that attitude that we wanted it to be joyful, and it was more about the documenting and bringing back things to share. Obviously, Zack didn't share that throughout, like, which is totally fine, and we're like on amazing terms. It's just, yeah, it's just like different mentalities, and I think that it looks at like the lens of what is professional climbing and storytelling in this day and age. And Washburn was part of that same kind of cloth where he worked really hard to fund all the crazy stuff that he did through National Geographic, through partners. And yeah, it's hard to sometimes do that stuff when you don't have that self-promotional bone that Zack didn't quite want to have. He was too pure of a artist in his climbing, and the climbing itself was art enough. So, and he'd like find like a microphone like stashed in the backpack, and that was like 100 grams too many, and I get the stink eye from across the other end of the rope. We knew it was kind of the beginning of that, was at the end in terms of that. But in general, it was more about discovering the film along the way, and each attempt we wanted to make it more and more, and not only to share the images that we were bringing back, but to celebrate Brad's and Barbara's life a little bit.
Yeah, well, and there are always hard choices, and I did see that the choice Zack made was an incredibly heartbreaking one for him, but as you said, you know, I do understand. So I'm glad that it all worked out. I hope that he was able to celebrate your success in the end with you too.
Yeah, we called him on the glacier first thing on the sat phone, and yeah, he was falling in love with his own aerial exploits and paragliding at the time, and doing all kinds of crazy stuff all over the place. And he's just killing it in life in general right now. He's got like incredible family, and his Christmas lighting business like exploded. While we like struggled on the film for years and years, he just like his success just like was monumental in all aspects of life. So
Yeah. Well, it's certainly the perseverance it took to complete the traverse and the film are what really struck me. I mean, even to the point you're talking about it as you're being wheeled off to the neurosurgeon, to emergency and the neurosurgeon. You talked about wanting to bring joy and that into climbing. What was it that kept you going to succeed with the original objective after that? I suppose what Bradford would have called tough luck.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain, like, but yeah, once you get these things like set in your mind in terms of an objective, and for us, I think we're such visual people, and there's so many different types of climbing and exploration now. But for us, it was this like combination of drawing a line with our bodies across one of the most beautiful skylines in the world, in a place where we've invested so much time, and there's a community around Talkeetna, Alaska, and the Alaska Range, and the pilots. And we kind of understood that it came from the early days when Washburn was pioneering and with Reeves, how to even land a plane on a glacier. And that kind of climbing is not a lot of people do it these days, but more like it's a art form in itself, which made us want to like keep going, and despite all the risks, and just as long as we took our time and didn't take it too seriously and still had that joy in the end, I think that's what kind of brought us through.
Yeah, and having been there numerous times, and I can almost imagine, the familiarity with the place that would also just keep drawing you back. When you said you were making your way across the traverse, I've always wondered when when you're able to see yourself do that. For example, when you were standing on the wave on top of Bear's Tooth, were you when you were doing that, were you accurate in terms of where you wanted to be on the wave at that time? Like, you obviously can't tell exactly until you see an aerial photo like that.
Yeah, no, you never know. That's the hardest part when you're on a cornice and you don't know like how far up to go. The higher up you go, the easier it is, and the faster it is, and the lower down it's steeper, and you're actually, losing energy second by second. And yeah, you're just kind of trusting your instincts on that. And a lot of that kind of climbing, I'm trusting Freddie as well, because he's such a like snow machine type of like ice and mixed climber, and spent so much more time on that kind of Alaska Range terrain. But yeah, you don't fully appreciate it often until you see the footage and like, oh, like there's a shot in there where I was like way too far out on a cornice on the top of the Bear's Tooth. And you can see it as like the camera comes around, and I'm just like unaware exactly where the risk is. And yeah, there's been countless friends who have perished just by not knowing.
Yeah, that's a tough one. In documentary film, as you know, you never know exactly what you're going to get or find, especially a film based on exploration like this one. And I mean, despite the unknown ending going into it, and of course the delays you experienced over the years, I guess you already answered this, because I was going to ask about, did you end up with the same film you had the original idea for? But I guess the idea for it grew after you got back, after the climb was complete.
Yeah, it wasn't even the completion of the climb that was driving us, because God knows the world doesn't need another, we made the summit kind of white guys conquering some peak type of film, and at certain points we wanted to make just a full Washburn historical documentary, and a lot of the people who are helping support the film said, no, you guys have to put yourselves in this, and you got to draw audiences in with this modern day climbing story, because that's what people kind of want to see as well. So we ended up with a parallel sort of narrative. But yeah, for us, it was always about sharing a bit of Brad's life, even though none of us ever met him. And you probably met David Roberts as well. And yeah, he passed away recently as well. And this was also a way into his life. And he was a big mentor for more Freddie specifically than me, but I also went to him in some hard times in my life, and he was there for me. And being able to really feature his voice and some of his stories as part of this generational story of passing down knowledge and exploration was a big part of our motivation.
Well, and I have to say, it was such a heartwarming experience to see David up there on the screen with Bradford Washburn, and just to see him looking so well and in his element. So thank you for that. I think your film will probably be sources for others down the road as well.
Yeah, well, we're hoping. I mean, we have like this one-of-a-kind library of Alaska Range footage, and in much in the same way Brad's photos have inspired generations of climbers to seek out new first ascents. We're hoping to kind of open up our library of footage for documentarians, filmmakers, especially people doing things in the conservation realm in the Alaska Range, to be able to use that footage. So yeah, feel free to reach out at Exhibition Studios until we get like the full nonprofit site up. But I think we're going to hopefully pay it forward in that way.
Right. I was going to ask you what your plans are for Expedition Studios now that you've finished building. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a space. It's mainly just a launch point for expeditions where we can organize gear and have some creative space to collaborate with editors and different people. But yeah, we're just trying to find the balance. I think yeah, the filmmaking is sometimes a tricky thing, trying to balance art and commerce. And yeah, we've got a number of projects. I'm sure you might have seen some stuff on Taylor's lithium mining, sacrifices of the Green Revolution doc that she's been working on. And yeah,
that was pitched at DocPitch as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you've seen it all, but yeah, we've got probably 14 unfunded films going on right now, as well as just like, trying to pay the bills with other stuff. And yeah, we've got a Northwest Passage sailing expedition this summer for National Geographic with Mark Sinnott again, writer. So that's going to be a good. Hopefully we'll have not only like the Disney film on that's kind of focused on a seafaring mystery, but also more of a personal piece from the Inuit perspective. So looking forward to sharing that.
It's great. I just did see your piece on the Tepui that was in the latest Nat Geo magazine.
Yeah. It's kind of part of that same Explore series.
Okay.
Yeah, and those are good fun and good way to like keep exploring.
That's for sure. Yeah. What were there any really surprising things that you learned while making this film, doing this whole project?
I mean, I think definitely there's like all these ports in history, or like especially like the Amelia Earhart connection with Brad, and you don't realize how all these legendary characters intersect and how small the community of adventure and exploration really is when you start looking into it. And then he's writing letters back and forth with Ansel Adams and Amelia Earhart, and they're all collaborators and artists supporting each other. So I think it makes me want to collaborate more with like friends and peers and be a better mentor of my own. So that was kind of an unexpected discovery throughout the process of making Sanctity of Space.
Yeah, I found that so surprising, that because I had, of course, no idea that he had been approached by Amelia and her husband to do that, and for him, you know, thinking about, wow, what a guy to have such a considerate, calculating kind of mind to figure out, this is just too much of a risk. It didn't sound like he was a huge explorer, but not much into his Russian relay type of project climbing expedition.
Yeah, he called exactly where she was going to crash and said, this is what you need to do. And yeah, he kind of, that was like sad, but also really telling of his character and precision in everything that he did. Even the story that we did for National Geographic on Everest, looking for Sandy Irvin's body, was also based on one of his photographs that he took in a Learjet flying over Everest when they first mapped Everest. So yeah, we just keep having intersections with his life, and it's pretty special that he keeps influencing so many people, and with the Boston Museum of Science living on, that'll go forever.
Exactly. And you building expedition studios will go on and on and on.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Renan, and for sharing some of those great stories. And thank you for the film. And see you soon.
Really appreciate you, Joni. And yeah, your all the work that you do and all the stuff that DocLands does. It's a lot of people don't realize the tireless efforts behind a lot of these festivals. So yeah, we appreciate it from the entire filmmaking community.
Thank you. See you soon.
Okay, we'll see you soon, hopefully in person.
Great.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.